you will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious.
Racial. Mr. President, I stand not here as a supplicant. Vote as your moral conscience dictates to you. For the issue is not Israel or Zionism. The issue is the continued existence of this organization, which has been dragged to its lowest point of discredit by a coalition of despotisms and racists. The vote of each delegation will record in history its country's stand on anti-Semitic racism and anti-Judaism. You yourselves bear the responsibility for your stand before history, for as such will you be viewed in history. But we, the Jewish people, will not forget. For us, the Jewish people, this is but a passing episode in a rich and event-filled history. We put our trust in our providence, in our faith and beliefs, in our time-hallowed tradition, in our striving for social advance and human values, and in our people wherever they may be. For us, the Jewish people, this resolution based on hatred, falsehood, and arrogance is devoid of any moral or legal value. For us, the Jewish people, this is no more than a piece of paper, and we shall treat it as such. Thank you, Mr. President.
And then the assassination or the killing of Kennedy in 63 or 62, the President of the United States of America. Why? We want to know who killed him. Somebody who by the name of Lee Harvey, and then another Jack Ruby killed Lee Harvey. Why did he kill him? Jack Ruby, an Israeli, killed Lee Harvey, who killed Kennedy. Why did this Israeli kill the killer of Kennedy? Then the killer of Jack Ruby, the killer of Kennedy, died ambiguously and mysteriously. We don't know before the trial. We have to open the files. The whole world should be. We know when we read it that Kennedy wanted to investigate the files of the nuclear reactor of the Israeli demon, and then it is to do with the Security Council. It is to do with the peace and security of the world, and then we should open this file. Why?
In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. May He bestow upon His prophets. Praise be upon Allah, the Almighty, who is just, kind and compassionate. May He bestow upon His prophets His blessings and His grace from Adam to Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus Christ, and His last prophet Muhammad. Following the World War II, they resorted to military aggressions to make an entire nation homeless on the pretext of Jewish sufferings, and they sent migrants from Europe, the United States, and from other parts of the world in order to establish a totally racist government in the occupied Palestine. And in fact, in compensation for the dire consequences of racism in Europe, okay, please, thank you. And in fact, in compensation for the dire consequences of racism in Europe, they helped bring to power the most cruel and repressive, racist regime in Palestine.
Yesterday, the man who calls the Holocaust a lie spoke from this podium. To those who refused to come, and to those who left in protest, I commend you. You stood up for moral clarity, and you brought honor to your countries. But to those who gave this Holocaust denier a hearing, I say on behalf of my people, the Jewish people, and decent people everywhere, have you no shame? Have you no decency? A mere 6 decades after the Holocaust, you give legitimacy to a man who denies the murder of 6 million Jews while promising to wipe out the state of Israel, the state of the Jews? What a disgrace. What a mockery of the Charter of the United Nations. Now, perhaps some of you think that this man and his odious regime, perhaps they threaten only the Jews. Well, if you think that, you're wrong. Dead wrong.
گاهی سردمداران رژیم صهیونیستی ما رو تهدید هم میکنن، تهدید به حمله نظامی میکنن، اما به نظرم خودشون هم میدانند و اگر نمیدانند بدانند که اگر غلطی از اونها سر بزند جمهوری اسلامی تل آویو و حیفا رو با خاک یکسان خواهد کرد.
The UN Security Council unanimously endorsed the nuclear deal between Iran and 6 world powers. The resolution authorizes a series of measures leading to the end of UN sanctions that have targeted Iran's economy. The measure also provides a mechanism for UN sanctions to snap back in place if Tehran fails to meet its obligations. Defense Secretary Ash Carter traveled to Israel Monday, his first visit there since the nuclear deal was announced. Carter said he has no expectation of persuading Israeli leaders to drop their opposition to the deal, but he pledged to work together despite differences.
So here's my message to the rulers of Iran. Your plan to destroy Israel will fail. Israel will not permit any force on earth to threaten its future. And here's my message to all the countries represented here. Whatever resolutions you may adopt in this building, whatever decisions you may take in your capitals, Israel will do whatever it must do to defend our state and to defend our people. Year after year, I've stood at this very podium and slammed the UN for its obsessive bias against Israel. And the UN deserved every scathing word for the disgrace of the General Assembly that last year passed 20 resolutions against the democratic state of Israel, and a grand total of 3 resolutions against all the other countries on the planet. And what about the joke called the UN Human Rights Council, which each year condemns Israel more than all the countries of the world combined. As women are being systematically raped, murdered, sold into slavery across the world, which is the only country that the UN's Commission on Women chose to condemn this year? Yep, you guessed it, Israel. And this circus continues at UNESCO. UNESCO, the UN body charged with preserving world heritage. Now, this is hard to believe, but UNESCO just denied the 4,000-year connection between the Jewish people and its holiest site, the Temple Mount. That's just as absurd as denying the connection between the Great Wall of China and China. Ladies and gentlemen, the UN, begun as a moral force, has become a moral farce. You see, everything will change, and a lot sooner than you think. The change will happen in this hall because back home, your governments are rapidly changing their attitudes towards Israel. And sooner or later, that's going to change the way you vote on Israel at the UN.
I give the floor to the representative of Israel.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, you have just adopted yet another absurd resolution against the State of Israel, against the Jewish people, against historical truth, and one which stands in complete and utter contradiction to all values which this disintegrating organization is supposed to stand for. All this at a time when forces of radical Islam are destroying the history and legacy of many nations, demolishing mosques and churches, and not even sparing archaeological sites. All this at a time when the State of Israel is the only nation in the region which upholds these values, protects these places, while allowing freedom of worship equally to all religions. If it were not so said, we would find it funny that an international organization established for the purpose of documentation and preservation of history and heritage is extorted into being used as a tool to rewrite the annals of history. The battle for Jerusalem did not start with the last vote, nor would it end with today's. Israel is sovereign in Jerusalem and shall continue to exercise its sovereignty there, while Palestinians and other Arab nations continue to toy with imaginary and absurd resolutions, which put to shame those who place them on the agenda, as well as those who raise their hands in favor. Jerusalem's futures will be determined by the one and only historical truth, one which we will stand by with deep determination, willing to pay any price. The fate of this resolution shall be no different than that of UN Resolution 3379, adopted in 1975, which equated Zionism with racism. That absurd resolution was cancelled 16 years later, but the moral stain still remains on all those who adopted. It might take years in our case as well, until the Jerusalem resolutions are eradicated from the annals of this organization. In 1975, it was Israel's ambassador to the UN, the late Chaim Herzog, who tore the paper of the resolution to shreds on stage in front of the entire world. I have no intention of doing it in front of you today, not because of your dignity, nor because of the dignity of this organization, but simply because this resolution paper is not even worth the energy needed for tearing it to shreds. It will be much simpler and a lot more appropriate to place it in its rightful place, the garbage place of history. And this is the garbage, Madam Chairman, and this is the resolution, and this is the place for it. On the one hand, it will become one with similar resolutions adopted with regards to the Jewish people. On the other hand, it might get a bit crowded between uncountable UN Human Rights Council resolutions, the UN in New York resolutions, UNESCO resolutions, and other diabolical ideologies for the destruction of Israel, devised by past empires and dictators not worthy of us mentioning them, all of which have this in common: they all disappeared off the stage of history, existing no more, while the people of Israel is alive and well, and the blue and white flag with the Star of David, Magen David, is waving above Jerusalem, our eternal and united capital. Like any Jewish groom in the past 2,000 years, on my wedding day, just before giving myself to my beloved wife, I swore before one and all, if I forgot you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget its skill. Im eshkachech Yerushalayim, tishakach yemini. As long as Am Yisrael chai, Jerusalem and its history will never be forgotten. Thank you.
The United Nations Security Council has passed a resolution that demands an end to Israeli settlements in Palestinian territory. The United States abstained from the vote, defying calls for a veto from Israel and Donald Trump. UN Ambassador for the United Nations, Samantha Power, spoke after the vote.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has reacted angrily to the US abstention on a United Nations resolution condemning settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. He accused President Obama of a shameful move and said he has asked his government to re-evaluate ties and contracts with the UN. I have instructed the Foreign Ministry to complete an evaluation of all our contracts with the United Nations within a month. This includes Israeli funding of the UN institutions and the presence of a UN representative in Israel. The US opposes the settlements but has historically used its Security Council veto to block similar resolutions and support its ally Israel. Obama and Netanyahu have had a strained relationship as the US president's efforts to forge a two-state solution have failed. Yesterday, in complete contrast to their commitment, including an explicit commitment by President Obama in 2011, the Obama administration conducted a shameful anti-Israel ambush at the UN. Israel's policy of building on land captured in 1967 is widely seen as illegal and as a stumbling block for lasting peace. Israel disagree and see the land as rightfully theirs.
This remains the true core of the conflict: the persistent Palestinian refusal to recognize the Jewish state in any boundary. This conflict rages because for the Palestinians, the real settlements thereafter are Haifa, Jaffa, and Tel Aviv. The issue of settlements is a real one, and it can and must be resolved in final status negotiation.